Hello, I am Dr. Vanishri Pabalkar from Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies. I am a faculty of marketing. Today, we'll be talking about a topic called business to business marketing. To give you an overview of B2B marketing, we'll talk about explaining each of the component of business to business market, buying decision process in business to consumer market and compare it with the business to business market. We'll look at the differences in the business to business market and compare it with the B2C market, that is business to consumer market. Here in the table we see the different characteristics of each of the market, which talks about demand, volume, number of customers involved in the process, the transaction, location, distribution, nature of buying, buying influence, negotiations, reciprocation, leasing and promotion. So one by one, if we look at when we talk about business to consumer market and business to business market. Demand, when we talk about in the consumer market to begin with, it begins from the individual customer. So I as the individual customer, I'm wanting to buy a pen or a laptop or a equipment. I'll place a demand in the business to consumer market directly out there. When it comes to business market, it is the organization who requires a product or a particular good. Therefore, it is not the organization but the people who are representing the organization who will be placing the demand in the market. So it is called as indirect demand when it comes to the organization or the B2B market. In case of B2C, it is the direct demand that is placed in the market. When we look at the volume, now when we look at the volume, the number of people, the number of customers who are involved in this process. When we look at the business to consumer market, it is smaller. When we look at the B2B market, the volume is very, very large when we compare to B2C. Number of customers involved in this process. When you talk about the consumer market, there are many customers across who will be my customers, who will be my target audience. When it comes to B2B market, I have concentrated marketing strategies. I have customers in smaller pockets in the B2B market who are my target customers. Therefore, a point that has to be kept in mind here is not everybody and anybody under the sky is my customer. Therefore, when I'm percolating or giving the information about my product or service, I need to be very sure that this information is given to the appropriate target audience itself in the first place in the B2B market. Location, when we talk about, in the B2C market, it is dispersed when we talk about the intensive buying behavior or intensive strategy in your distribution, in your channels of distribution. That is what is applicable here in the business to consumer market. But in your B2B, it is concentrated. You have certain industrial pockets, certain industrial hubs and segments where you are located. So it is concentrated in certain areas and not as widespread as that of the B2C market. Nature of buying, when you talk about in your B2C business to consumer transaction, it is personal because I as an individual customer am involved in the buying process. When it comes to the buying process of B2B or the organizational buying, it becomes more professional. Therefore, we term it as rational decision also because it is in benefit of the organization that decision has to be taken. It is not that I as individual customer can influence out here in this buying process. Buying influence in your consumer market, many a times it could be you yourself who is making the decision. In very rare occasions, your friends, business, colleagues, etc. might be influencing your decision to an extent. But when it comes to buying influence in an organization, there are multiple levels through which this happens. It comes from the basic level to the higher level of the order. When you talk about negotiations, in B2C, the negotiations are very, very simple. There are not much of negotiations itself in the first place because I as an individual customer am supposed to pay the MRP and go for buying or procuring that particular product or service that is there in the market. But when it comes to B2B, since the buying many a times happens in bulk or larger quantities, it calls for a room for discussions and negotiations. Reciprocation. In B2C, let me give you a small example here. I go and buy a laptop from a particular organization. It could be Dell. Here, once I buy and the transaction is closed, do I go back to that particular organization? Does that particular organization try to establish connection and try to establish long-term relationship with me? That happens in very rare occasions. When it comes to the B2B, this reciprocation or reciprocity happens to a very great extent because relationships are very important and crucial in B2B kind of organizations. Leasing. When it comes to leasing, it is very, very less in the B2C market, but it is happening at a very great extent in the B2B market. And promotion, when you talk about in the consumer market, happens through advertising. When it comes to business market, we do not see commercials of these products on air or in print or any other media by and large. It happens only through personal selling in a very great extent. Now we have digital platforms also for promotion of business to business products. Thank you for watching all of the videos on the topic business to business marketing. You can stay tuned and stay connected to watch more and more videos on this topic.